Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 164. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode and this channel where all we do is talk about new movies. New movies that come out in theaters or in streaming. We'll discuss and talk about what we liked and what we didn't like about the movie. And then at the end of the podcast, we wrap it all up and decide, after watching this movie once, is it timeless? Is it something that we would want to rewatch in the future and maybe, just maybe, have it become one of our favorite movies of all time? Sounds ridiculous, but still a great time to discuss new movies. So if you want to voice your opinions and you want to let me know, Victor, here on this podcast, what you guys liked, what you guys didn't like about some of the movies, or maybe even agreeing or disagreeing with my own opinions, well, this is a great chance for you guys to follow us on any of the social media platforms like Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. If you actually search up Timeless Movie Podcast, again, you can follow us there and you'll be aware to all the new episodes that we post. But it's also a great way to message me and let me know about any movies that you guys have recently seen. And there's also a emailer that you can send us at the Timeless Movie Podcast. It's actually timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. Send me an email. Let me know any of the recent movies that you've checked out. Doesn't have to be new ones. It could just be any movie that you've recently seen and what your opinions are of that movie. I would love to hear about it. Now, if you're interested in hearing about some of my opinions on past movies, well, this is a great time to talk about episode 163 of the Timeless Movie Podcast, in which we ended up talking about Edgar Wright's newest film, The Running Man. This one stars Glenn Powell, Coleman Domingo, Josh Brolin, and I thought this movie was good. It wasn't great. I felt like it had the potential to get there, but if you want to know what kept it from being great, well, go listen to episode 163 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. You can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, you'll find us there. That way you can, interact with us. Let us know if you agree or disagree with my opinions on The Running Man. Okay, enough of the housekeeping. Let's go ahead now and talk about this week's newest movie, in which we are talking about the new horror entry for Osgood Perkins. It is called Keeper. It stars Tatiana Maslany, Rosa Sutherland, as well as Ket Turton. Biggest reason I wanted to watch this movie is, well, one, it's a horror movie. It caught my eye, but it was actually the trailer. The trailer for this movie actually set it up in a very interesting way. There was a trailer that we saw in the theater where it kind of highlighted the two main characters, Liz and Malcom. Liz, played by Tatiana Maslany, and Rosa Sutherland playing Malcom. And they kind of framed the trailer where they first showed from the perspective of Liz, saying, how she doesn't really know anything about Malcom. Can I really trust him? What's going on? And then the second half of the trailer shows from the other side where Malcom is kind of doubting Liz. Like, can I trust her? Can I really commit to this relationship? And so very interesting setup to that trailer. And that kind of really caught my eye about wanting to watch it. And then again, Osgood Perkins, he made Long Legs last year that I really enjoyed. And so I wanted to give it a shot. So we checked it out this past weekend. Let's now go ahead and move over to our non-spoiler section. That way we can dive in a little bit deeper into this movie and give a little bit of a synopsis. Okay, Keeper is directed by Osgood Perkins. If you are not aware, Osgood Perkins actually made the film Long Legs, which is a great horror movie that, at least great in my opinion, that I got to check out in 2024. It was just so well done. Nicolas Cage came out in that movie. It kept me on the edge of my seat. But Osgood Perkins is on a roll right now. He has 2 films for 2025. First film is The Monkey. That one is actually starring Theo James. It came out earlier, I want to say maybe February timeframe. That one was more of like a horror comedy. I thought it was pretty good, but nothing spectacular. And now he has Keeper, his second entry in 2025. And so Osgood Perkins just has this very unique style where, again, he has these kind of camera shots and angles that make things very interesting to watch, but it kind of keeps you kind of guessing as to like what the hell's about to happen. What we're watching, is it real? Is it meant to, what is it meant to tell us in this kind of a scene? And so, I really enjoyed that kind of a style. And so he's really becoming a nice, fresh take for the horror genre so far in the 3 films that he's made. But Keeper, this one actually stars Tatiana Maslany, Rosa Sutherland, Ket Turton, and a couple of other actors and actresses. And essentially, This film, Keeper, is about a couple named Malcolm and Liz. They have been dating for about a year, and they end up trying to go to a cabin in the woods in order to celebrate their 1 year of dating. But as you start seeing more of the story unfold, you start to see from Liz's perspective, like, Malcolm acts a little bit weird things start going on in the cabin. And so now she just doesn't know if she can trust Malcolm because of what he's been saying and his actions. And so as the story goes on, you start seeing some crazy things unravel, some noises start being heard in the cabin that they're in, and some weird stuff ends up happening. Again, I'm going to keep it very vague because I don't want to spoil anything, but that's essentially what the story is about. And it primarily takes place in this cabin that they're in the woods. So after leaving the theater, after watching Keeper, I thought that this movie was pretty good. It has its moments that actually really got me to flinch. Again, I know that I've mentioned this a couple times for some of the horror movies that I've talked about, but it takes a lot for me to actually flinch and get scared on some of the jump scare moments. Sometimes I could see it coming. There was a couple moments in this film that were just completely they cut to a specific scene or they transitioned very quickly, and I just was not anticipating it. So props to Osgood Perkins and the editing team that like really developed those kind of moments. They kind of caught me off guard. But even for the entire hour and 37 minutes that this film had for its runtime, I was intrigued the whole time. I was just curious, like what the heck was going to happen. Is Liz really going through this moment? Like, is it real? Because there's certain moments that end up happening in the movie where you kind of start contemplating like what she's seeing. Like, is she actually seeing some type of scary images, some people that are there then aren't there. And so the whole setup of it is just very mysterious. It's not the best horror movie I've seen. Again, it doesn't really match up to Weapons or to Bring Her Back or even to maybe Together, but it's still a very interesting story as you see it all play out. Let's go ahead now and move over to some of the pros. That way I can kind of give a little bit more context of what I enjoyed and then also give a little bit of the context of what maybe I didn't enjoy as much. Okay, first pro for Keeper is going to be the camera shots and the way that Osgood Perkins and the team were trying to kind of highlight specifically the character of Liz. She is usually in the cabin almost like viewed in a way where she's always like viewed from like very far away. The view is always obstructed. Usually there's always something in the way, either the stairs of the cabin or some type of pottery. Something is always in the camera shot, and it never allows us to see Liz sometimes from a specific type of a camera angle. Now, this doesn't happen all the time because obviously, whenever there's dialogue between Malcolm and Liz or Liz and Malcolm's cousin Darren, you obviously can see Liz directly. But it's the moments when she's just kind of observing or she's looking outside the window. The camera immediately turns into like a position where like you're near the roof, and it almost makes it feel like you're a ghost or you're a creature in this story, and you're just sneaking and you're kind of observing from far away a very intimate moment or a moment where somebody's just by themselves just trying to think about what's going on. And so it's very eerie in the way that it feels, but I think it's effective. I really like how they just prop up the camera again, either very high, very low. And when they're looking at Liz from far away, you don't see her face. You just see her kind of looking outside the window, and you just see something obstructing that view. Again, trying to add more tension as if you, like the audience member, are the one that is looking upon Liz and seeing the horror that is going around her. So really dug that. I enjoyed that. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the film Presence that came out a little bit earlier this year in January, where the camera is essentially is the POV of a ghost. That's not fully the extent of what's happening here, but there were just a couple of shots that reminded me of that. So that I think was really well done. Second pro that I have for Keeper is the design of some of the creatures. I'm not going to spoil it here because if you are going to watch the movie, I obviously want you to experience how these monsters and these creatures look like. But you get glimpses of it in the trailer. And so they just look very freaky. It's just designs that make you think like, okay, well, what the hell is this? Like, what am I looking at? They're just very quick flashes in the trailer, but you see somebody with a white face and you see somebody with a bag over their head, and you're just wondering why. What the hell is this? Or how did this creature come to be? And just the way that they designed all of those looks just added to more of the creepiness that this movie tried to convey when you're watching the movie. So props to the costume as well as the makeup and really all the effects for these creatures. I thought it was really just done really effectively to just add a little bit more to the scariness of this movie. All right, those are pretty much a lot of the pros that I had for Keeper. If I move over to the cons, I really just have one nitpick, and it's just really the feeling of the story itself. I did enjoy it. I was never bored, but I felt like from a ending perspective, I was hoping that it would be just a little bit more satisfying in regards to how it all wraps up. There's something that happens to a character, and again, I'm not going to spoil anything, so I'm going to be pretty vague. So this nitpick might not make sense, but there's a situation where a character ends up meeting their fate, but I feel like the film kind of really closes that loop really fast, and I wanted there to be a lot more of an expansion of what this character has to go through just to make it a lot more satisfying. And this might be just a personal thing because I keep thinking back to Weapons and how that film ends and how satisfying you feel after watching one of the main antagonists of that movie when they meet their end. You feel like a rush of like, wow, I can't believe that they actually were able to pull that off and making it worked effectively. And I was hoping for something very similar in Keeper, but I just didn't get that with the character that they were highlighting. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the spoiler section, but that was really my biggest nitpick. Other than that, again, I enjoyed the film overall. Let's move on to the next segment, which will then ask the question, should you guys check this movie out in theaters? My personal opinion is if you're already a big fan of Osgood Perkins, you like his style of horror and how he just tries to make scenes very awkward and keep you on the edge of your seat in regards to what the heck is happening in the story, I would say give this one a shot and kind of make up your own opinion, see if you like the style that he's putting up in Keeper. I also would recommend just because of the fact that the performance of Tatiana Maslany, I thought she did really well. And so that would be my opinion. And I also feel like horror movies have an advantage in that when you're watching it in a theater, in a dark room, it already has that heightened sense of tension that like, okay, you know that something freaky or something scary is about to pop up. So watching scary movies in the theaters is obviously going to be better than watching it at home. But that would be my recommendation is that if you're already a big fan of Osgood Perkins and you already like horror movies of his style, give this one a shot. If you're not too much of a fan of like Longlegs or The Monkey, then maybe wait for this one on streaming. All right, those are all of the non-spoiler thoughts that I had about Keeper. Let's now move over to the spoiler section. Let's start talking a lot more details of Keeper. But before we do that, if you don't want to be spoiled, please jump out of the video now, jump out of the podcast, watch the movie, then come back. That way you can hear my full pros and cons and also some of the spoiler stuff that I'm going to mention. And that way we can really agree or disagree on our opinions about this movie. Okay, hopefully that gave you enough time in order to jump out of the video because we're jumping right into spoilers. But the first question we have to ask ourselves, is Keeper a timeless movie? Is it something that I would want to rewatch in the future? In my personal opinion, I'm going to say that this movie is not timeless. Biggest reason I could say that this movie is not timeless and why I don't really care to watch it again is that I really just feel like the way that they kind of set up this story, I feel like it could have been done a little bit more effectively. And what I mean by that is I think it's the fact that I had seen the trailer and how they framed the trailer was, hey, we have two sides of the same story. We have Liz's perspective and we have Malcolm's perspective. And so going into the movie, I thought that we were meant to not understand or not trust either character, like either Liz I can't trust or Malcolm I can't trust. Instead, when you watch the movie, it's actually fully from the perspective of Liz. So right from the get-go, you immediately don't trust Malcolm. You don't know if he's lying about his life. Is he really a doctor? Does he have a secret family and Liz is just an affair that he's having, and that way he kind of avoids his family? you don't really know. And so it immediately puts us as the audience in a position where I really can't believe what Malcolm is saying. And so I'm really wondering if the film would have just been more effective if it actually would have structured the story where you see Liz's perspective, but then you also see Malcolm's. And that way you as an audience member are struggling and you're tiptoeing as to, well, who should I be believing? Is Liz some type of evil creature? Is Malcolm the evil one? Like, what's going on? And so I guess I was set up by the trailer into thinking that it was going to be some type of a story in that way. And instead, it kind of flipped on its head, and it ended up just being a story fully about Liz experiencing a terrible weekend with her boyfriend. So that's kind of, I guess, one of the bigger reasons that even though I did enjoy like what I was watching in the story, it wasn't anything that was like mind blowing or anything that like just completely captured me. There's still a couple of scares here. There's still a lot of unique takes in regards to some of these monsters that they show. But again, the story is enjoyable, but it's nothing that's going to really captivate you and be like, whoa, holy crap. Like, I can't wait to watch this again to pick up new details. You pretty much get everything you need to know. You get the gist of it after watching it once. And so that's the unfortunate part. Couple of spoilers about it. You end up finding out that Liz is basically dealing with a man in Malcolm who has been living for 200 years. And now you ask, well, why has he been alive for 200 years? Well, it's because when he was a young boy, him and his cousin Darren actually ended up shooting some type of creature. She looked like a woman, but this creature was pregnant, and they ended up shooting and killing this creature. And as it gave birth to these 3 or 4 creatures that were unlike anything you'd ever seen. And because they ended up killing the mother, they had to make a deal with these creatures, essentially saying, hey, we will let you two, and when I say you two, I mean Malcolm and his cousin Darren, we'll let you continue to live and we'll give you wishes that you want, but you have to provide us with sacrifices. You have to provide us with women that we can then use in order to continue to grant this wish that you guys want of immortality. And so what essentially happens is that you find out that Malcolm and Darren, throughout the 200 years that they've lived, they have continuously just met different women, and they have eventually just provided them to these creatures to sacrifice them. And Liz was next in line. What they were not expecting, though, Malcolm and Darren, was that Liz essentially looks exactly like their mother, the creature's mother. And then they started showing flashbacks, and they show when the actual incident happened that Darren and Malcolm were boys. They showed the creature's face, and it actually looked exactly like Liz. And so the whole turning point is the creatures look at Liz, they think it's its mother, and so they eventually give her the abilities and the powers of what the mother had somehow. And now the tables have turned, and Liz is basically able to capture and torture Malcolm and really take away his immortality. And that's really how the film kind of wraps up. This kind of leans into that aspect that I was mentioning before about one of my cons. When they eventually get to the point of Malcolm and having the tables turn on him, that really was just like a 5-minute sequence or even less. I kind of wish they would have expanded on that. I wanted him to actually be tortured. He had been basically tricking and torturing women for 200 years and giving them as sacrifices in order to continue living. And for him to not be able to suffer and to be able to show that, hey, you are the villain, you are the monster. I wish they could have just expanded on that more and show him being chased by these creatures, him being tortured a little bit more. They do kind of torture him a little bit, but I don't know. I guess I'm being very selfish in this kind of a way and in a very dark way. But I feel like because he is the true antagonist, he should have just been tortured way more. Instead, they kind of wrap it up really quickly. He immediately becomes old because his immortality is gone, and then he just gets his head dunked in a jar of honey. And that's essentially how the movie wraps up. So I kind of wish it would just expand a little bit more. I wish the structure of the story would have made me kind of tiptoe a little bit more, just like the trailer had me doing. But again, that's maybe just me describing a completely different movie. Anyway, those are all of my thoughts on the overall reason why I don't think this film is timeless. I do want to say, though, that Tatiana Maslany's performance is awesome in this movie. There are a couple of times where she gets like scared of the creatures that she sees. Like the first time she sees a woman with a bag over her head, she immediately just freaks out. And the way that she would just jump and like put her hand over her mouth, it just all looked realistic. And then the point where Liz's character ends up finding out about the truth from Malcolm, she is just in shock and she's just crying her eyes out and she just doesn't know what to do. She wants to go home. And just that whole performance, I think, was so believable. So props to Tatiana Maslany. She did such a great job in this movie. Okay, that's all I really got for The Keeper, but I want to hear from all of you. Anybody out there that's listening, let me know in the comments. Leave me an email. What did you think about Keeper? Did you get a chance to check this movie out? Did it interest you at all to watch this movie? Let me know. I would love to hear whether you enjoyed it, who your favorite performance was, did the story make sense for you, and if it is timeless. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to me and my full thoughts about Keeper. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 164 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out our next episode of the podcast because we're going to be covering one of the highly anticipated movies, and it is going to be Wicked for Good. I am super excited, and it is episode 165, which means we got a special guest. My brother is going to be joining me to talk about that film as well. So be on the lookout for when that episode drops. All right, everybody. Appreciate you guys listening. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you all later.